reason I suggest that is because there are usually a lot of questions that are asked afterwards. And the questions sometimes lead into something that causes conflict based on 3 words: I didn't know. One or both of the partners who are involved with each other at some point will say, I didn't know, as a usual thing. I didn't know. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. I didn't know you thought like that. I didn't know you would do that. I didn't know that those were your intentions. I didn't know that at one time or another you did such and such a thing. You never told me that. And so therefore I didn't know. And it's I didn't know, I didn't know, I didn't know, I didn't know. And I have found from observation, and I believe it could be true, the more things that people know about each other in fine detail, the less conflict there will be, because people will know everything that is worth knowing before they engage in their first act of sexual intercourse and serious sexual play. And that's the reason for it. But the 3 key words, I didn't know. And that should never be the case in any circumstance. It shouldn't be anything that you didn't know. You should know everything that there is to know that's worth knowing. That's both parties. And then theoretically, and I believe that even functionally, it would work out that both people would then be on the same page on every issue because they have asked about every issue in advance, and they were satisfied with the answers that they got from the other person, one to the other. So that minimizes the, I have a question, but I never asked you, and I'm going to ask it now because I didn't know the answer to this question, and it bothers me. But if that is done up front, then you'll have less conflict according to the logic later on. To that, I would say that under the United Independent perspective, a person can choose not to do that if they're not comfortable with doing it. Both parties can meet each other at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 6 o'clock say, we know everything that we need to know. Let's go for it. They can do that. But once they do it, according to the logic, there shouldn't be any conflict as a result of questions asked afterwards. The whole idea is to minimize conflict. That's the whole idea for the entire concept. So if that will work for the parties, if they can agree, say, well, we're just not going to ask and answer these questions. That'll take the mystery out of it. That'll take the fun out of it. That'll take this out of it and that out of it. Okay. Then, once you're engaged, you should have no complaints ever about anything, because you have already concluded that there's no justification for complaints. And you've done that in advance. And that's keeping everybody honest. Because either party then can say, look, we agreed. We weren't going to ask these kind of questions. So therefore, I'm not providing any answers to any of these questions that you may ask after the fact. And you don't provide any for me. And we will keep the mystery going forever. And we will be very comfortable with these mysteries, or we will try to learn to be comfortable with them, because it's too late to start asking now. Yes, that's the whole point. The questioning can start at any time. You can put off the questioning for 2 or 3 years if you want to, or for a couple of months, or for 2 days. You don't have to start asking the questions. You can have a long period of observation, but both parties should be comfortable enough See, it's totally democratic. Totally democratic. Not autocratic at all. But both parties must be comfortable enough to ask and answer all of these questions. So it's almost a natural flow. You might say it is a natural flow. Because if a person feels a little nervous about answering certain questions, then that means they're not ready anyway. That's a signal right there that they can continue just having conversations or having coffee or tea or whatever it is that they have. And with no sexual intercourse. They can interact with each other around an environment or whatever. But that's the major stipulation. In fact, that's the only one. You can go anywhere with each other, go on plane trips, whatever. But no sexual intercourse, no sexual play, until all parties are ready to ask and answer the questions prior to any acts of sexual intercourse and or serious sexual play. Now, if they're not comfortable in doing this, then simply don't start the questioning sessions at all. In fact, might not ever get around to it. But the criteria is, before there's sexual intercourse, questions have to be asked and answered by both parties. The only way that a person can skip over a question is that both parties agree that they're both going to skip that particular question. They're not going to answer that particular question or any other question that the people have a disagreement on. It's all voluntary, like the whole quote-unquote relationship. It's supposed to be voluntary anyway. It's not coercion. No pressure at all. None. Zero. If a person feels like there's pressure, that means that something is not working anyway. Both parties should be totally relaxed, one to the other. But the matter of the person's bringing up, well, taking the mystery out of it, taking the intrigue, taking the, well, some people might say the cat and mouse out of it. You can do that. Sometimes the game playing is very stimulating and adventuresome and etc. But most people who have gone that route and done it in a hurry, they had a few quick thrills, and then they had many months, sometimes years, of anguish and regrets, and sometimes serious conflict that results in violence. It didn't start out that way, but it can very easily end that way, so that there's no memory at all of how it started out.
Yeah.
And this compensatory way of questions and answers prior to, the theory is that everything will be very smooth, and over a long period of time, the theory is correct. In practice, very, 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 very satisfying, complete with all the thrills. That, in fact, that could be on the question list. How long do you think that you could feel the thrill with me? It's good for about 9 months or 2 years or 3 weeks. What do you think? You know me pretty well, I mean, up to this point. So what do you think right now? Do you think this will wear off based on some of your prior experiences and whatnot? And if so, how soon? And the two people can agree. I mean, you know, they'll say, well, I would say within a ballpark guaranteed of at least 8 months. Beyond that, I think it's kind of up for grabs. Because I usually get bored with a person after 8 months to 12. 8 to 16 months, I think, is max for me. And that's interesting and informative to know.
Right, and
then the person will ask the other person, well, what about you? Say, well, you know, my experiences have been that, you know, my last experience was 8 years, you know, and then it was only terminated on account of the other party. Say, oh, well, my last experience was 4 weeks. I mean, you know, and that was stretching it. Well, that's, you know, you make a note of that. Then continue the question. Well, I mean, a person can say, well, you know, would you think that you would enjoy a trip with me? You know, a trip where? Well, a trip to the beach, or a trip to on a cruise and whatnot. And say, well, the person might say at that point, I don't know. I have to think about that. I've never been on a cruise, maybe. You know? And that could be on the question list. See, no questions off limits. Have you ever been on a cruise with anyone? What happened after the cruise? What happened during the cruise? Was there a downer after the cruise? If so, how soon? What brought it on? Well, the answer might be, well, I was on the cruise and everything was wonderful as long as we were on the cruise. After the cruise was over, the person began to look different to me. They were all right when we were on that island. They had lots of things to do. And after the cruise was over, about 4 days after, they started getting boring. So that's a question, okay? So you make a note of that.
Right.
Boring 4 days after cruise.
Right.
As long as you can stay on the cruise, everything is fine. After the cruise, crash and burn after 4 days. Or at least it begins to ease off. And then eventually after 3 weeks, it's gone altogether. The magic is gone. That's your last experience. Okay. How many experiences did you have like that? That's the question. Well, every one. Really, about 12. Okay, well, that's your record. Okay. 12 cruises. After 2 weeks after the cruise, 12 downers. Okay. So I can pretty well, on those averages, I mean, I can expect that in my case, too.
Now the answer...
It's just a matter of, see, there's no limit to the questions. Everything that you possibly will ever want to know, it's got to be asked and answered up front. So
right now, here's what you said.
When you see that person coming towards your door, you look out the window, you say, now, that is a person that I am extremely comfortable with, more than I've ever been with anybody. And I like it.
Oh,
I'm not bored. And even when I'm bored, I'm not bored. You know?
Wow.
Yeah. See, because I know that person. I know. I'm not wondering. I'm not wondering where the person is coming from now. And even if I do wonder, it doesn't bother me to the extent that I'd want to trade that person in to anybody. That tells you a lot about what you think about interacting with this person. When you answer, really, not so much the question that the answer that you would get from the person, the answer you would get to yourself. Because there have been instances where people have laid out just that scenario and they have said, well, you know what? It would be what it is. And what it is, that's what it is. But in making that assessment and picturing that in my mind, considering all things, that would still be the person that I would choose out of a crowd of 1,000. There's a song in the musical, goes way back, Porgy and Bess. He can come home as late as can be. Home without him ain't no home to me. Can't help loving that man of mine.
Wow.
Now, when both parties can say that, you got a little something unique going there. Yes, if both persons are nervous about it in any way, or indicate, directly, indirectly, it simply means they're not ready. That's all it means. It's not an uptight situation at all. It just simply means is they're not ready. See, the key is if they agree, well, this thing is just getting too complicated. Let's just do away with it. We're not going through this. Let's just let it flow. When you let it flow, you shouldn't be saying later on, I didn't know and I don't like it. See, so it takes care of itself. Say, we agreed, we would just let it all, free wheel. See where it goes on its own. Turn the steering wheel loose. It's too uptight. Let's just find our way, blindly.
Okay.
Or semi-blindly. At least, maybe not both eyes closed, but maybe one eye closed. One ear covered, to minimize what has been disaster in relationships. And that is those 3 words. I didn't know. It comes up every time. I didn't know. I didn't know that would make you angry. I didn't know you gamble like that. I didn't know that, you're whimsical. I didn't know that you believe in, just not coming in. And just taking a trip somewhere and not telling anybody where you were or where you are. I didn't know that. I didn't know you were violent. I didn't know you were on the down low. I didn't know, I didn't know, I didn't know, I didn't know. I didn't know you used to go with my aunt.